The scriptures I'm going to be reading today are from a bunch of different places throughout the Bible, because we're looking at this topic of anger. We've been dealing with the monsters of the heart, that we've been having a space and a time to set aside during the season of Lent to assess where we're at in our hearts and to make some changes when necessary. And I don't know about you, but as we've gone through kind of these 7 deadly sins in 5 different sermons, we kind of compact them into 5, because one Sunday we did 3. And as we've kind of observed these different monstrous kind of parts of our hearts that rise up and cause havoc and chaos, for me, some of them ring more significant than others. So some of you, I've mentioned some of these monsters of the heart, and you're like, nah, it's not really something is a big issue for me. But I assume that at least 1 or 2, or perhaps 3, because I know there's a bunch for me, kind of like, oh, that's kind of part of that side of me, the broken side, the shadow self. There's all kinds of terms for it that I need to really press back on and work on. And this is an interesting one because we're talking about anger. Anger is not something that I am typically prone to. I struggle a lot more with, lust, pride, gluttony. I'm right there trying to push back on the part of me that's not healthy and good. But anger is one of those ones that we'll talk about in a little bit why, but different personalities approach it differently. And, I'm a lot like my dad. My dad, you could get in his face and scream that he's the biggest idiot to ever walk the earth, and you could be screaming in his face and you'd be like, well, that's an interesting opinion, And that's just kind of how he rolled. I've literally seen people screaming in his face, and he just kind of pats him on the back. It'll be okay, And so I kind of have more of that personality, but I think it's important to assess, even for people, if you're like me and you kind of have more of that chill, laid-back personality, and you're like, I don't struggle with anger. What can happen is that we suppress it over and over again, and we don't realize how much anger there is simmering below the surface. And so at the most inopportune time, something can snap. And so we need to assess our own hearts, even if you don't think this is an issue that you have. We need to come to each of these with an open heart to say, Lord, teach me something about myself. Now, so anger is a strange kind of monster because it might be the most complicated of all the monsters in our hearts. Some of the other ones are a lot more clear-cut. Anger is a little bit different because anger can be good in some spaces, as we'll see in some of the scriptures. That there can be a good version of anger that can send forces in a good direction, or there can be bad versions of anger that send things in a very bad and harmful direction. So I guess when I'm thinking about the monster of anger, the Hulk comes to mind. You guys know the Incredible Hulk, of course. Back in the old show, there was like a famous line that he said, he's talking to one of the dudes and he's like, don't get me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry, right? And then he, uses his anger. In that very episode, he says that line, which is kind of a famous line. He uses his anger to go save a lady. So you're kind of like, wait, what is it? Is the anger good or bad? He literally uses it to break down a building and jump in and save her from a fire. And this is kind of the uniqueness about anger, that there is a way in which anger can be directed in a positive way. We want to talk about that this morning, but it tends to be headed in a negative way. And the challenge with anger is that it's very volatile. And this is because it's a part of our survival-based flight or fight response that we all have. When there's a threat that is put against us, there's something inside us that's even physiological that happens. And inside your body, there's in your kind of like brain emotive center, the whole physical part of you gets adrenaline and cortisol is released into you as kind of a natural way that you respond physiologically to perceived threat. And so anger is not in and of itself wrong. It's kind of a part of who we are so that we see a threat, a ravenous dog or raccoon, and it's like something happens in us that causes us to get out of that bad situation or to defend ourselves or whatever it is. And that's just part of being human. But the basic definition, this is just a standard definition of anger, is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. And that's just kind of like a basic kind of like Webster's or Oxford kind of definition. It's pretty simple. It's a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. So this is the unique thing about anger and these feelings. They're not in and of themselves wrong, number one, or a sin. And they're not in and of themselves something that you can just stop, right? I mean, tell that to the baby. No, I am ripping mad right now. I'm just going to have baby come up and we'll just use it as an example. It's going to be amazing. So one of my favorite skits is an old Bob Newhart little thing where he's playing the part of a counselor. Maybe you've seen this one. And he's sitting at his desk, and the next patient comes in, sits down. He's like, what can I do for you today? What's going on? And she's like, I'm just afraid of being buried in a box alive, And he's like, okay, can you tell me about it? She's like, I don't know what to do. I can't go into elevators. I can't go into houses. I can't go anywhere because I'm just afraid that I'm going to be buried alive in a box. And so he says, well, I'm going to give you some advice that I give a lot of people. And I'm going to tell you 2 words. He's like, should I write this down? He's like, most people can remember it. Okay. So he said, I'm going to give you these 2 words. Stop it. She's like, what? Stop it. Stop it? Yes, stop it. S-T-O-P, another word, it. Stop it. And it's funny because it's the worst counseling situation you've ever seen. Because that is not how fear or anger, these emotions don't work like that. You can't just tell somebody to stop it. That's why she was there. She couldn't stop it. And so he's just frustrated with her because she won't stop it. He's like, you don't want to keep living like this, do you? That's crazy. Stop it. She's and then he's done. He's like, okay, well, we've been 3 minutes. I'm good. He's like, do you want anything else? She's like, well, I paid for 2 more minutes, so we'll keep going. So she tells him more of her problems, and then he does the same thing. Stop it. And then the end line is the best one. He's like, stop it or I'll throw you in a box and bury you alive. And that's the end. It's really funny. But the point is well made. That's why I like it, because you can't deal with emotions by commanding them to cease. That's not how it works. The emotions are arising in you for a reason, and they can either go in good directions or bad directions. And this is very much so the case with anger. So I want to fill out anger. I want to define it a little bit more robustly than just a strong feelings of annoyance or displeasure or hostility. That is what anger is. But I want to fill it out by saying that anger is an emotional response to harm perceived. When you perceive some harm, anger is that emotional response. And when I say harm, it can be unfair or unjust hurt. It can be mounting frustration, or it can be loss. All these things become harm that we have to understand what to do with the anger that is automatically triggered physiologically and emotionally in us when there's a threat or a perceived threat of harm. We all wrestle with this. Now, the reason I say it's not necessarily sin is because the scripture talks about it in a very unique way. Let me give you some examples. Ephesians 4:26. What does this mean? Be angry and don't sin. This is what Ephesians 4 says. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Be angry, but don't sin. Well, that says to us there's a pathway that anger can go that is good, or is healing or is restorative, and there's a path where the anger can go that's destructive and harmful and sinful, because that's the essence of sin, right? Harm. So now Jesus. Think about Jesus. In the scriptures, it actually says that Jesus got angry a couple of times. Mark 10:14. Remember the disciples? They didn't let the little kids come to him, and it says that he got angry at his disciples and said to them, "Let the little ones come, because of such is the kingdom of heaven." He's ripped at his disciples because they're blocking the kids from coming to him. Mark 3:5, he looks at some of the spiritual leaders who are upset about Jesus' healing, and he says, the text says, he looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed about their stubborn hearts. There's a mounting frustration with their stubborn hearts. He's trying to help and heal people, and they're caught up in is he keeping the right law codes here? Then, of course, you have this Luke 19, Matthew 21, Mark 11, and John 2, where Jesus is seen to be tossing tables and clearing the temple, and obviously he's not doing it out of joy. Woohoo! Flip another table. No, he's doing it with an indignation that you could call anger. The text doesn't say he was angry, but what he's doing seems to be a little volatile. Now, I would argue that he's actually doing this with an actual calculated prophetic passion because of the circumstances and a kingly authority. So he's doing it with a controlled anger. He's not out of control. It's not like Jesus is just ripping, roaring mad, and so he's just like flinging people and tables and animals and things. No, he's doing this as a sign as to his authority in the temple, that he is the kingly prophetic authority who has come to set the temple right. So, but nonetheless, there is still this indignation and anger that we feel in this moment in the text. So we're going to come back to Jonah, the book of Jonah, but one of the most powerful ways to assess anger is through the book of Jonah. We're going to come back to it, but I just want to read a little bit of it to you. In Jonah 4, verse 1, it says, to Jonah this seemed very wrong. We can get to that a little bit later. God had shown mercy to a group of people that were enemies of Israel. He's shown mercy. And so to Jonah, the prophet in Israel, this seemed very wrong, and the text says he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? This is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you would be gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take my life away, for it is better for me to die than to live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry?" I love that question. I mean, it's like God is like this, get on the couch, Jonah. Is it right for you to be angry? And I think we need to ask ourselves that question in a second. So I guess I'm just trying to say that this is not in and of itself sinful initially. It's human. Does everybody feel that? Okay. All of us experience anger. The problem is that most of us don't know how to address our anger. We don't know what to do with it. Anger unaddressed becomes a monster that can cause suffocating damage in our own hearts and irreparable damage to those around us. And this is the problem. It can suffocate our hearts and can crush those around us. That is not what we want. That is where it becomes a monster. That is where I would argue it becomes sin, when it harms you and others. This is why the late great Fred Rogers, you guys remember him? You guys don't remember Fred Rogers? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Are you okay? I'm like, you guys surely. Yes, he takes great musical and creative links to address anger with children on his show intentionally. Because I think he's right that children don't know how to deal with anger because their parents don't know how to deal with anger. So maybe you remember this. He's sitting on his little space, and he's holding some toys, and he's like, kids, sometimes people, when they don't know what to do with emotions, they use toys to help them. He's holding a little yellow truck. And then he just starts singing. I love this guy. He just breaks out into song. What do you do when the mad that you feel, when you feel so mad you could bite? Do you guys remember this? Maybe not, but you can look it up. You can go look at it. It's still on his website. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up your friends for a game of tag or see how fast you can go? It's great to be able to stop. He's singing this the whole time. When you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want, stop when I wish. I can stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Now, this is interesting because what he's doing, even though he's using the same language as Bob Newhart uses humorously, stop it. He's doing it in a different way. He's saying the anger you experience is normal. Now let's figure out how to pause and make space to channel it in a different direction. Instead of doing what's wrong with the anger, to do what's right with it. So stop it from going the wrong direction and aim it in the right direction. And that is because anger causes great problems internally and externally. And you say, well, I don't know that it really causes that much problems for me. It does, whether you know it or not. I mean, the science is there for it, just so you know. In fact, I can almost imagine one of those, those like commercials that have like some kind of like new drug on the market, and then at the end they always say the disclaimer that's really disturbing, and then they're like, buy it anyway, So, and I guess it doesn't bother people. I guess we're just so used to hearing all the terrible things it can do to you, but pick it up tomorrow, And I can imagine this commercial on anger, promoting anger, and at the end saying anger may cause high blood pressure, insomnia, anxiety, depression, heart attacks, digestive issues, and strokes. And by the way, that's all true. So we have to understand what to do with this. So I want us to, this morning, as we close out, we only have a few more minutes, to just kind of like, how do we handle this anger, this emotional response to perceived harm or unfair or unjust hurt or potential loss, when the frustration is building, when everything seems out of control, when your expectations are broken, when you're feeling overwhelmed, disrespected, misunderstood, overlooked, mistreated? What do you do with those emotions that automatically, as a living human, breathing human, arise in you? So one thing that tends to happen is we begin to excuse it or mishandle it. So here's some of the comments you'll hear. It's just my personality. That's not acceptable. Yes, some personalities struggle with this more than others, but we can't justify harming ourselves or others just because our personality tends to be a little more type A, okay? Something else you'll hear is, well, they bring it out of me, blame. So we go from justification or blame. It's that person, it's that situation, it's that boss, it's whatever. And so we start blaming our rising hostility and rage somewhere else. Nope, that's not how we deal with the monsters of our own heart. Spiritualization, well, that's my spiritual gift. Have you ever heard somebody who's really angry all the time and they actually make it a spiritual thing? That's not the way of Jesus. Okay, that one should be obvious, but it's not. And then this is what I often do. It's no big deal. NBD, It's no big deal. What's the big deal? Everybody gets angry. And that's, if you're around a lot of people who are angry a lot, that becomes just like, that's just normal. I mean, we used to live next to somebody who we could literally hear them screaming at each other every day. And they were lovely people. They were friends of ours. We hung out as families. This was when I was a kid. And I asked my parents, why are they yelling at each other all the time? And they're like, that's just how they talk. So, no big deal, And I'm just like, this is crazy. So we don't want to mishandle anger or excuse our anger. When these moments come, and they will come probably today. Are you planning on eating out today? It may happen today, because a lot of times it happens in restaurants with the lovely staff who is trying to serve you. This is when you feel overlooked and disrespected. And so I've seen some of the nicest Christian people get angry in restaurants. This is why servers even brace sometimes on Sundays, because the church crowd's coming in. And I'm not even, it's funny, but it's horrible. You can talk, my brother was a server for a long time, and they did not like it when the church crowd came in, because those people are sometimes the most ungracious, angry people. You know what that says to me? That kind of Christianity is, I don't want anything to do with it. Whatever that is, don't want any part of it. Parents with toddlers often feel overwhelmed, sustained frustration, just like on you all the time. I want this, mommy, daddy. And this anger is like boiling inside of you. Parents with teenagers, same thing. Overwhelmed, sustained frustration, just in a different way. Driving. The threat of crazy drivers, the loss of time. I've literally been sitting at a light, and before the light turned green, somebody behind me was already honking. It's not even green yet. What am I supposed to do? I have to start before, just anticipate it. This is how crazy it gets. Long lines, especially in medical situations, just waiting in line. You can just see people's anger starting to boil. And kids, the worst one to me, kids at sporting events. You want to see who people really are? Take them to their children or grandchildren's sporting events, and you will see monsters all over the place. It is literally disturbing. It's not just the perceived harm they are experiencing or unfair treatment. Now it's their kids or grandkids who they're perceiving the harm that's given to them or the unjust treatment they're giving. And so this sustained frustration because the kid isn't doing what I think he or she should be doing. He's not being treated fairly. And you throw in amateur athletes and amateur refs and these parental expectations and an overly invested sense of participation, an over-realized sense of the significance of the moment, and you have anger eruptions all over the place. So much so sometimes they have to bring in policemen to send parents out and grandparents out. And this happens not just out there in the world. This is us. How many times have you ever watched a church basketball league? It's hilarious because it's so disturbing. I've literally had to step in before people were like bloodied to death because at a church league, they were about ready to throw down. I remember one time I had to step, on my team, he was a cop and he was like well-trained, and then there was another dude who was just big and upset, and they were about to go at it, and what do? It's a church basketball league. None of us are that good. And it doesn't matter a bit. There's no prizes. There's no nothing. And so I just kind of like stepped in between them because they were literally face to face, staring, and whoever threw the first punch, it was all over. And so I just kind of squeezed, thankfully I'm skinny, squeezed and like, hey guys, not a big deal. Aren't we having fun in this church league? And thankfully, I'm an idiot enough that I guess they didn't feel like punching each other anymore. Probably wanted to punch me. The point is, this is the world we live in. How does this work? So I want to suggest to you that when these moments of harm or perceived harm or hurt come, you can go one of two directions. You can either go toward foolish anger, and that is the unexamined or uncontrolled version of anger, or you can go toward anger wisdom. And that is where you manage, you examine, you control the situation. And that's why I brought these. Because these are what you have to do when those anger moments come. I have a little side job. I do subcontracting. I put up solar panels and anything anyway. And this is what I take. I love these things because I pop out of the car and I pop these out. And I just kind of set them down anywhere I want. Don't come near me. I don't know what the point of them is, but I use them, because it's just fun. And so I put them down, and the point is, there's a safe space here, because I'm putting up ladders and putting up, solar panels and different things. And so I don't want anybody with their car to come swiping my ladder, or whatever. And so I put these up, and that's all you need. And you see these things as you're driving around, you're like, oh, there's cones, I'm going to go around, is the idea. But this is what we need in these moments. We have to have a safe space, a place to examine why we're angry. And this is the question God poses to Jonah. Is it good for you to be angry? Isn't that a powerful question? Let me just step in to this little cone area. And let me take some time to address the anger that is rising up within me. Is it good for me to be angry? Is it good for me to sustain these feelings of hostility? Is it good for me to let this anger capture my heart and control what happens next? And so this is where we can either go toward foolish anger, and I'll read you a couple of scriptures that have to do with foolish anger versus a wise approach to anger. Here's a couple. A lot of them come from the book of Proverbs. A patient man has great understanding, but a quick-tempered man promotes folly. And that's a man or woman, by the way. It's a person. Ecclesiastes 7:9, do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger settles in the lap of a fool. Proverbs 29:11, a fool vents all his anger, but a wise man holds it back. You see the difference here? There's a slowness to it. That's why it says that God is slow to anger. There's a process, there's an aim, there's a focus here. Proverbs 15:18, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger calms disputes. He who is slow to anger, Proverbs 16:32, is better than a warrior. And he who controls his temper is greater than one who captures a city. It's easy to capture a city. It's very hard to control your rage. He's kind of speaking in this term to kind of give us the sense of the scale. Do not make friends, Proverbs 22 says, with an angry man. Do not associate with a hot-tempered man, or you may learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. So the Proverbs, the wise man of Proverbs is encouraging us to stay away from angry people. So we can either take this in a foolish direction, and I believe that if you take hurt in a foolish direction, what ends up happening is it becomes hostility, and then the hostility becomes rage, and then if you don't deal with the rage, it becomes a deep, dark bitterness that just stays with you forever and corrupts everything inside of you. It's like a cancer growing inside your heart that is eating at your soul. The better option is to put out the cones of wisdom and process. Is it right for you, Stephen, to be angry? Is it good for you? The same question God asked Jonah. So the answer to Jonah's question that God asked him was an absolutely no. God had literally shown mercy on this great city of Nineveh, which was the center of the world at that time. And the answer was no. Jonah was upset because he didn't want God to be gracious and merciful and compassionate to this certain group of people, and God was. And it went against his own biases and his own hatred and his own anger. So we want to come to the point where we can learn how to manage our anger and be slow to anger, to embrace these feelings we have of anger, sadness, rage, whatever they are, but then to learn how to constructively move them in the right direction. So with this, I'll close, because I have a lot more, but I'm just going to close with this, okay? Because we're out of time. Here's what I want you in this space to process. If you take seriously this question that God asked Jonah, and I think that God is asking us this morning, is it good for you to be angry? First of all, the question has to be asked, why am I so angry? So we ask ourselves, and we were honest with ourselves, why am I so angry? Did they hurt me? Did they hurt somebody else? Was it a threat that I perceived, or is it a real threat? So why am I? And we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to take this. Jonah was doing this in prayer, by the way. He's talking to God. So you can tease this out with God. And he can handle your anger. Don't worry about that. The second question is, if I let this linger, how will it affect me or others? If I don't deal with this anger, how will it affect my own heart or others? And we have to be honest about this. We have to be honest about how it will affect us and how it will affect others. And then the next thing is we say, well, how can I slow this down? Now, this is why the writer of the New Testament says, be slow to anger. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Did you hear? Don't let the sun go down on your anger. You ever wonder what that's about? It's this process. It's this space that we have to make to take our anger seriously. When there's a perceived threat, when there's injustice, that might be the cause that moves you toward justice seeking and peacemaking. Anger is really important. There's a lady I was listening to this week. Her name is Christine, and she started an organization called A21 that is fighting slavery in our world, which, by the way, if you don't know, there's more slavery now if you count multiple kind of things, forced labor, sex slavery, forced marriages that are happening with little younger ladies and different things across the world. There's more now than ever been in the history of the world. And so her organization at the heart is angry. This is wrong. This is unjust. This isn't right. So they're moving out across countries, all across the world, to push back the force of evil. That's where anger moves toward peacemaking. But we have to make this space, because most of the time that's not where our anger is going. It's just going toward revenge and bitterness and rage. And the last question is, how can I use this emotion inside of me? How can I harness it toward peacemaking energy? So this is crazy. I know you're going to think I'm nuts. Somebody harms me in some way. Maybe it's emotionally. Maybe they harm somebody I love. I'm the dad at the YMCA basketball game, and that ref is just calling terrible calls on my son. And every time he does it, I'm like, he's getting paid at least $17 an hour. Probably not that much. To call this game correctly, because my son one day might play in the NBA. Not a chance. But what if I take this space to use my anger in a wise way, and what if, instead of anger building to this hostility and rage, what if I slow down and I channel my energy toward peacemaking? And what if at the end of the game I go up to the ref and I say, man, I know this is really hard. You get people yelling at you all the time. I just want to say thank you for doing the best you can and helping these kids have a fun time. What if I channel it the right direction? Because isn't that what Jesus does? He takes the hostility and the shame and the brokenness of the world, and he channels it into the ultimate peacemaking opportunity at the cross. And so this is the call for followers of Jesus, that we take that anger and we don't just suppress it. We don't volatilely, just spew it out and hurt people around us. But what we do is we aim the energy of that perceived threat and harm toward peacemaking ends. This is the way of Jesus.